as a mother, there's just this entire stream of consciousness that happens. And I don't know how to describe it other than it's like a snap second. It's like a mental blast that happens. And then like you're in the room with your coworker and you come back to that moment and you're like, let me text and so, I feel like there is just even connecting with people is different. Like nothing is casual anymore.
Welcome to Misconnections. Each episode, we bring a true story of a misconnection and unpack it with the person who lived it.
This week's misconnection to the cool coworker who misunderstood my friend request with Nia Starr. Nia James Starr is a designer and sustainability specialist helping to implement local solutions that will help solve the climate crisis. She lived in New York City for 15 years and currently lives on the beautiful Central Coast of California. More than anything, she is a mother to her wonderful daughter, whom she loves with her entire heart. Nia, we're so happy you're here. Welcome to Misconnections.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
And we're so excited for the conversation we get to have. But first, we would love to hear your misconnection story. So would you start by reading that for us?
Sure. Okay, here we go. We met in the small town on the California Central Coast that I'd recently moved to, just 5 months after I became a mother, following 15 years of living in New York. I was still learning who I was in this new place that was so vastly different from a big city, on top of navigating a career pivot and raising a child. Eventually, I found my footing again and began working in sustainability for a local nonprofit partnering with the city. That's where our paths first crossed. You drew me in immediately with your smart and steady demeanor and ability to make complex things sound simple. The first time we talked was in a meeting about sustainable buildings, and I was amazed by how well you carried yourself in a room full of important people. You have such a calm, kind, and reassuring presence. And I remember thinking, I'd really like to know them outside of work. But we met in a professional context, surrounded by community politics and polite nods. Our conversations were practical and all business, budgets, deadlines, outreach plans, and I was the newcomer, attempting to balance professionalism with a quiet hope of belonging. Though our relationship was rooted in work, I felt a real sense of alignment in how we saw things. You saw the world in systems and stories the way I do. One day, I found the courage to ask you to get a coffee. We were texting about a book you'd read about electrifying mobile homes, which was exciting to me. Oh my goodness, we're texting, I thought. This isn't a work email or an official channel through the city, but I wanted more. I wanted to meet up in person and try to start the real friendship I longed for. I envisioned talking to you about what it's like to rebuild a life, to start over in a small town that isn't yet home. Maybe we discuss how climate work is both urgent and exhausting, or how it feels to want to do big things while raising a tiny human who changes everything. When I posed grabbing coffee together to continue talking about the book, I offered some days I was free. You told me you weren't on the clock those days, and it hit me. You saw this as work. Your interpretation of my ask set the tone between us, and I realized our feelings weren't aligned. To you, I'm a colleague who's 10 years older than you, an age difference that seems to be much more of a factor in a small town than a big city. I've accepted that for now, you're someone I need to stay professional with, someone whose respect I still want to earn, so I don't blur the lines. I send polite emails, I CC the right people, and I keep that small hope to myself that maybe we could be friends someday. Motherhood and reinvention have both taught me that connection takes courage, especially when you're still figuring out who you've become. We work so hard as mothers to appear capable, competent, composed. But beneath all of that, we're still just people who want to be known. Maybe someday when the timing feels right, I'll finally send that message. Want to grab coffee? Not for a meeting, not for a project, just two people who are finding their footing in the same small town.
Amazing. Love it.
I just love that story so much. It's so honest and tender. And, I think there's a universal feeling of like, ooh, do you want to be my friend? Kind of that is just so beautifully told in this story. And so we want to kind of like talk about the context of this all. This story is interesting because you are in the midst of major transitions in your life, lots of shifts. And, when we start the story, you have moved to a new city, 5 months after having your first child. Tell us about that timeline and how it felt to go from a city you've lived in for 15 years to a new city with a newly acquired person and identity.
It's really difficult to describe because it's not like I moved somewhere that's similar to where I was. It is so vastly different in terms of landscape, geography, density. It was both difficult and exciting. The region we moved to is one of the most beautiful places that I've ever been to in California, that I've ever witnessed in terms of nature and how close everything is to the ocean or the mountains. And I actually first started visiting around 12 years ago to visit my partner's family at least once a year. So I'm pretty familiar with the place, but I was not prepared for landing here, living here, building a life. But yeah, I actually don't have a driver's license. I still don't have one. I think there's got to be a record for a 30-something-year-old who moves to California and doesn't drive. But
That's a statement. You're making a political statement.
You are being sustainable. I
Yes,
appreciate
exactly.
that's a great
It's
answer.
very on brand to stand by your work.
But yeah, when I first moved here, that actually had a big part in how I was feeling, not being able to drive. And not that it was a bad thing, because I think it was a time of just really turning inward at family life, trying to feel settled. Because when we first moved here, we were renting and we were also in the process of buying a home. There was just a lot happening, like in education, making sure that my baby's eczema wasn't flaring left and right, which it was. And so not having a car, being in the downtown area, was really nice because I would be taking walks with my daughter. But truthfully, it felt like I was an observer of life happening around me because I would just be going on these long walks. I was still on a self-imposed maternity leave until I was ready to enter back into the workforce in a, full-time capacity. And it was nice because I got to really get to know the city itself. These long walks were long, you guys. I would walk along the boundary and really get to know it, but it was odd because I felt like such a newcomer and an outsider because I wasn't ready to start talking to people randomly yet, but I would see the same people all the time at the same places, so I almost knew who the figures in town were, and it just felt like I was part of it, but also an outsider, and not in the same way New York is like that, where you are both experiencing a public and private experience, but everyone, for the most part, is really involved with each other in a public scene in New York. Um, Here, it's like people don't really interact. It reminds me of suburbia, even though it's not suburban. Technically,
Yeah.
we're in an urban setting. So, but yeah, people don't really cross the line to interact. So, anyway, I felt like an observer. I really missed my friends. I also, to this day, I actually really miss the lack of events and really interesting cultural happenings that there are in New York City at any given moment. The pace is really slow here. I think another thing that made me feel like an outsider or just an observer was that people here already really know each other. It was really apparent just sitting in a coffee shop or in a park. You would see people be like, "Oh, hey, Sally," or "Hey, Bob." And I think that made me feel like I wanted to get to know people, but I
Yeah.
just wasn't sure how.
I kind of have this imagery of like you being inserted into like Gilmore Girls, like that town. You know what I mean? Like because they all know each other and they're all like in conversations, but yet like it's if as you are watching the show in the town, in that sense.
That literally is what it felt like to me. And I think it's not a very diverse place.
Hmm.
And having moved from the neighborhood in Brooklyn that we did, that too, had this layer of being an outsider. But it totally feels like Gilmore Girls. I don't know. It still feels like Gilmore Girls, to be honest, because it's so quaint where we moved.
Well, it's like when we were, watching Gilmore Girls and into the show Gilmore Girls, we were imagining what it would be like to be in the town as one of the characters that we knew, but not imagining what would it be like to show up to a town that already has kind of their community figured out.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, one of the things that is so layered and interesting about your story is, like you were just mentioning, the timeline of you have a baby, you move, you're even transitioning housing after you move. And it's great that it sounds like you took your time in entering into that community and choosing to step in, to start first by watching and then see where you wanted to step in. So then you start your job, you start to hit your stride professionally. And it sounds like at a certain point you started to feel like, okay, I'm ready to connect and I want that. But that's when you have to start kind of doing the vulnerable thing of putting yourself out there, which you did. What do you think made it feel, you've mentioned a few factors already, but that made it feel tricky or challenging once you did decide that you were ready to start building new relationships in the town that you had moved to?
I think one of the big things was not having a regular hub of people to connect with. I had a remote job at the time that was part-time, and so I would meet with people online, and the people I would meet with didn't necessarily live in the same city, but they lived in the county, and I didn't see them regularly. So it wasn't like a normal situation where you go to an office and you see people all the time and you are like, oh, let's go get drinks, or let's get dinner. Even if that was the case, I kind of couldn't because we didn't have childcare set up. When I would take meetings or have dedicated work time, I would basically roll off and then, launch right into motherhood duties and everything that entails. It was like grabbing hours here and there. So I think that entering into motherhood has truly been the biggest experience of my life, biggest learning experience of my life. Pre-motherhood and in New York, when I'd get off work in my typical routine, it would be to go out with coworkers, meet up with friends, or go home, do hobbies, or literally like rot in bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure. I'm
Know
sure
it
that
well.
yes, I'm excited for the day when I can just rot again. um, but yeah, like when you're a mom and your coworker turns to you at 2 p.m. and is like, "Do you want to grab a drink or go get dinner?" Before I'd be like, "Sure." And then, on the way to dinner, I would text my husband, letting him know I'd be home later than normal. But now my brain immediately launches into thoughts like, I have to ask my husband if he can watch the baby. If he can't, is his mom available? Or do we need to call a babysitter, which we still haven't really locked in. We're still trying to get to know people to get a babysitter. Other thoughts are like, did I prep enough food in the fridge? Make it easier on them. If they do dinner alone without me, will my daughter notice that I'm not there? And will she feel sad or abandoned? So as a mother, there's just this entire stream of consciousness that
Mhm.
happens. And I don't know how to describe it other than it's like a snap second. It's like a mental blast that happens. And then like you're in the room with your coworker and you come back to that moment and you're like, let me text and let me go. So, I feel like there is just even connecting with people is different. Like nothing is casual anymore. Not that it's formal, but it's so much more planned and coordinated,
Yeah.
not spontaneous. Um, and I think too, I really struggled with brain fog
Yeah.
after having a baby. And so I think connecting with people was difficult because I couldn't remember when I had things going on or what I had to do. And anyway, So, all that to say was not really having a centralized place where I could regularly get to know someone, which is how you make friends, is, regularly having a purpose together or, seeking them out with the freedom of time. I just didn't have any of that. So,
Yeah.
I think that's what made it really hard.
I think that's something a lot of people struggle with as adults in terms of making new friends is that the places where we typically authentically meet people aren't so ingrained in our lives anymore. So a lot of us work remotely, but work is the primary space that replaced school. If you I play rec league sports, and I started that because I was like, I have no idea how to meet. It was after a divorce, and I was like, I have a few close friends that I kept in that relationship as it ended, but I now feel this collapse of community, and I don't know how, as someone who works for myself, works remotely, I could even have access to that. And so I just started playing soccer again as an adult, as a way of being like, well, there's 11 people on a soccer team, so there's got to be enough people, right?
Somebody's
So
gonna
it
talk
makes
to me.
sense. Yeah, we have to talk in order to play. So I think that it's a common thing. But another factor that you mentioned to us early on when we were chatting is also that, like, with the move, you were trying to make friends as you were also adapting to a new identity without people having the context of your history, of who you are without a child. And that I think was something you had shared earlier on was an important factor of what you were desiring too, was to be seen as, who you really are in its full entirety too.
Totally. That is such a good point that, yeah, just when I meet people now, it's almost like a blank slate.
Hmm.
And there was something almost frustrating or weird that they didn't know that I was a New Yorker, and that, not that I'm like, we think about the world differently, but definitely New Yorkers, just having been here for a couple of years, think about the world differently than people where I live now do.
Sure.
So it almost was this surreal experience where it felt like my history was wiped away, but it was just such a rich, vivid history in my mind, and I don't know how to present or capture that to someone when I
Hmm.
first meet them. So I don't know. I could feel even in those moments like this big part of my identity was slipping away, or it slipped away because these people didn't know, nor did they care. They just really cared about what I was doing now,
Hmm.
which felt like the least important thing to me, to be honest,
Hmm. Yeah.
compared to the really rich life I had in New York City.
So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about when you get to the place where you have this job and you're working in town now with people that are local, and you kind of meet somebody and you're like, ooh, I might want to be a friend with this person. What was it about this potential friendship that was like so appealing to you? And how did it feel when you realized you two weren't on the same page about what getting coffee would mean?
Oh, yes. I think in a lot of the meetings that I had sat in on, everyone was at least 10 years older than me.
Hmm.
And I mean, off the bat, this person, they're actually younger than me by 10 years, but I feel like my own approach to life is maybe more youthful, or, I don't feel my age, if that makes sense. I'm on
Hmm.
TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm hanging with the kids.
TikTok takes 10 years
Exactly.
off, but it's also like a very like big city, smaller city thing where,
Yeah.
like, I think, a New York, your age is
Totally.
actually 10 years younger.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that that might feel like a little bit more of a match.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly. And I really just gravitated towards them because they're one of the only people that I was meeting with that I could really relate to on that level. One big thing that I noticed is I really liked them in both a professional setting and not in a working environment. Not that I had experienced that, but I knew facts about them. Like, actually, they were the head of a production operation locally for drag shows, and they themselves were a drag artist. And so I just was like, whoa, that is so freaking cool. I want to know more, but I couldn't exactly ask these questions in like the 5-minute icebreaker before we launch into technical, sustainable building conversation. So yeah, I just think that they were really interesting, like in their professional life and in their personal life. I really liked that they were passionate. It was really obvious that social and environmental justice was very much a core value in how they lived their life. There aren't a lot of people who talk about politics in daily conversation here where I live, let alone in like a meeting at the city. You're actually not really allowed to bring politics into it. You have to be, diplomatic and accept all sides. So, but to me, like as a former New Yorker, that's just so important. Talking about politics is everything, even on a surface level. I think the average New Yorker has an opinion. I've actually met so many people who are apolitical. Like they just don't care, don't want to engage. And anyway, yeah, it's been
Scary stuff, yeah.
very scary and
Wild.
difficult to connect. Like I personally find it really hard to connect with folks who don't understand what it means to think about big decisions that affect the lives of others. So this person obviously really cared about that, and I just really was all for it.
Yeah. So then how did it feel? You put yourself out there. Do you want to get coffee? You realize that they're thinking you're setting up like a work coffee. How did that feel? And yeah, how did that feel for you?
It did not feel good. It was like, oh, I'm work for you. You associate me with work. I was at the time I was really bummed out. I was just thinking, oh my goodness, like I must be so boring to them if they're like, wanting to schedule me on their work clock, on their work calendar. So yeah, I think it also made me think about word choice or how I was presenting myself. Maybe I too was being too professional and they just didn't grasp that. But I think what I've come to learn is that people who work for the city here actually have to hold people at arm's length because there is just so much community engagement that if you let too many people in, it is not a good look because it looks like you're doing people favors, maybe down the line or things like that.
Cliquey or something like that.
Yes, exactly. So it made me think about, how even I was presenting to them too.
That's fascinating.
But disappointing because it sounds like, you've taken these steps of, I was kind of observing at first. Now I'm establishing myself professionally. I'm meeting a lot of people, but there's some core things that we're not aligned on. And then seeing and meeting someone where there is alignment, where you feel like there's more opportunity, but seeing whether it's barriers they're putting up or just barriers that exist in your profession that exist. So it makes sense that you didn't feel good about it, even if it has nothing to do with you, which I guess is the case. That it's just disappointing. It's disappointing to feel like maybe there's a little scarcity there, and then to have that option, not be available to you any longer.
Totally. Yes.
So a lot of this episode is about finding yourself and finding meaningful connection in times of transition. It reminds us so much of an episode from last season. So this is us officially adding that episode to your playlist. It's called How Do I Find Others Who Love Me in the Same Way with Thomas Page McBee. We've included a link to the episode in the show notes.
Well, we want to take a second and kind of get some other voices in the mix because, well, obviously your story is unique to you. It also has a lot of of points that are in common with a lot of other people that are going through a transition, who are grappling with identity, who are moving to new places. I know, like I mentioned when I got divorced, that was a big thing for me in friendship. And I remember thinking, like, I can't imagine, like, the identity piece felt so big to me that I felt like I can't imagine that I'll ever have a conversation with someone ever again where my divorce doesn't come up. Like it felt like so big, right? You have these big things that are happening that impact your connection. We also got to speak to someone last season who mentioned that when he was going through medical transition, was living in a small town, and that there was no one in that small town who was going through that, but there were women who were pregnant who were going through their own life transition, and he really like became friends with them. And so we just all have these like layers of our story that we can always connect to. But one line in your story that we want to start with is that really struck us was like, we work so hard as mothers to appear capable, competent, composed, but beneath all of that, we're still just people who want to be known. And that, I think, is, always our universal experience.
Yeah.
And those different transitions are obviously can make that challenging along the way. Would love to just start with a question of how you've experienced that desire to be known as you've moved to this new city and started a new chapter in your life, and then we'll share from some other people that we've heard from too.
How do I want to be known? I think it's so funny. This is how I think about the world. In New York, ... But truly, in New York, the way people are known is for what they do.
Yeah.
And not a lot of times for who they are, truly. And I moved to a place where actually the latter is what people are known for. Is, if you hear someone talking about someone else, it's always about, gosh, they're great, aren't they? Or, like truly them as a person. And no one actually asks, what do you do for work here? Like that doesn't come up, which is really shocking to my system. But for me, like, I definitely want to be known for how others are being known here. I'm honestly so inspired by the people I've learned about here, just being community organizers or getting involved, helping with this project in the sense of, they were so great to work with and were kind. And that's literally how people are known here, is just like being kind people.
Yeah.
And I am so inspired by that. Just, yeah, I want to be known as someone who helps others. Maybe I have some aspirations for helping bring voices of diversity to the forefront in conversation in society here. But yeah, I also just want to be known as someone you want to know because maybe you need a friend, and I'm happy to be your friend. Obviously, I need friends.
But you would also see that in others and would want to, be there for them too. Okay, so first we asked a couple of people to weigh in on their own experiences. So first we asked a mother of two who had moved to a new state and had to make new friends. So we asked her, what's it been like to make friends in a state that isn't where you've previously felt like you belonged? How has being a mom made that easier or harder? And so I'll read to you what she said. Trying to make new friends when you have little kids is feeling like you're entering the dating world again. Walking into the park, checking out other moms and seeing if they match your type B vibe. Then getting the courage to strike up a conversation about how your kid is also collecting rocks you'll find all over your house later. As the conversation moves on, you either realize you were way off in your assessment and abandon ship, or get up the nerve to ask to exchange phone numbers. They really should have business cards for this. Mine would be like, the awkward but very cool mom you met at the playground who is in fact as desperate as she may have seemed to make friends. Text me, DM me, let's get matcha sometime and watch our kids jump off shit together. In a new city especially, it can also feel like everyone already has their own thing going, their own core group, and you're trying to double dutch your way in. It's important connection. It's definitely worth all the effort, but it's exhausting and you have so little energy left to give.
So many similar notes I'm detecting. Oh my goodness, the double Dutch line. So true. It's like
Mhm.
observing everyone knows each other and has these many ways they're connected to each other. And you're like, how do I get in there?
Yeah.
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 So next we asked a mother of two kiddos living in Los Angeles, and she's actually like native to Los Angeles, but it's a big city, and it's a transition becoming a mother in the city too. And we asked her, what would you say to other new mothers who are desiring new connection or struggling to find friendship as they transition into motherhood? And this one is actually, we have a voice memo.
I kind of have to answer this one as someone who is an introvert, because I think as an introvert, it already takes more energy to put yourself out there to make new friends. But as a new mother, for me at least, I have been very protective of the little energy that I had left. Because new motherhood, you're underslept. You're trying to figure out this new version of yourself and what to do with a baby. So you really don't have a lot of energy. But I would say, while I believe you need to honor that boundary that you may have, protect your energy reserves that you have, while slowly starting to practice the yes muscle and say yes to more things, more outings, invitations, whatever it may be, birthday parties. I said yes to the mom circle, and that was my introduction into making mom friends. So just, in whatever capacity you have, pushing your boundary a little bit so you can get out there more. Again, this is as someone who's an introvert. If you're an extrovert, maybe that's not the issue for you. But also I would say allow friendships to look different than what you might expect, because I think friendships in this season of life are very situational. It's more centered around who your kids go to school with and what age your kids are versus, meeting someone out organically in the world outside of what your kids are doing, which can also happen, which also sounds wonderful. But for the most part, I think it's just allowing friendships to look different than what you might expect. And also, you just need one good friend.
That's really sweet. We then asked Morgan Dixon, a licensed marriage and family therapist who is a mother and works with parents, to give your story a read and tell us how that relates to what she sees in her practice, in her own life, I'm sure like all the time, and what other insights she had to share. So we will listen to what she had to say.
I feel so much for this writer and just the different levels of disorientation and adjustment that she's having to make. First, being in the first year of becoming a new mom, and secondly, adjusting to this new town, and a new job, and just I think one of the developmental processes that is really normative and expected after becoming a new mom and having a baby is just kind of like this long road back to yourself in certain ways. And one of the things that I hear her saying is that she saw things about herself really reflected in this person who she was interested in developing a friendship with, and that mirror felt probably, I'm just, imagining here and making assumptions, but I imagine that it felt kind of enlivening and exciting to remember maybe, I don't know, interests that she has, remember what it's like to connect with someone who really understands. And so, like the desire to connect with another person might also be connected to this desire to be with herself, in some of the ways that might have felt obscured or far away, since learning how to take care of this nearly all-consuming new little thing. It also sounds like in this story, it was a little bit difficult, or for her, maybe not difficult, but she kind of chose to not really say or express what she was hoping for with this person. And that's so understandable, just like socially, the mother part having nothing to do with it. But I think it's also really common. It's something that I do hear particularly with mothers after having a baby, just having a lot inside of them and not knowing how to reach for connection, or maybe feeling like when they do reach, it's batted away. So I just want to validate that experience is so empathizable. Like, I just feel for her so much. And I would really encourage people who are seeking connection and friendship to keep pushing themselves to risk a little bit, like in saying things like, I like you. Would you like to get coffee socially? I'm just new here and really needing someone to connect with. I know that feels more risky, and especially in, with all of the changes, that she might be feeling a little bit more tender. But it's just something that, I don't know, gives the other person a chance to kind of answer that bid for connection a little bit more directly.
Okay, we gave you a lot there. A few stories, a little bit of insight. How does it feel to hear all of that?
Gosh, honestly, just validating, maybe. Like, it's probably why I started tearing up, was like, oh my goodness, like someone gets it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like mothers are so strong, and I'm not trying to say like I'm so strong, but just when I hear a mother's account, knowing what they went through to get to where they are today, I'm just like, wow, like you're so strong. Like, that's crazy that you did that thing. Um, I really liked that account about the mother of two and saying type, like describing that type B mom aspect, because my sister is a type A mom, or my younger sister is a type A mom, and just, the type that's like bag by the door 2 days before, the plan that she had made a week ago. And I actually classify myself as a type C mom, where like in a past life, I was just type A about, organizing and getting things together. But in my mom skin, it's like there's a room actually below, if you can't see it, but down below, it's just strewn with laundry. So
Yeah.
much laundry, but it's all clean.
Yeah.
Type C mom. And yeah, like the bag, like nothing is together, but I know we have this thing the next morning, but that bag will be prepped 5 minutes before we have to get out the door. So
Yeah.
just thinking about even the way that you're redesigning your entire life, like just the way that she moved to a new state. And yeah, I really relate to that a lot. And the person who just spoke, it's so spot on. I think there is an element of the person that I really wanted to be friends with that I just really enjoyed because we were so passionate about the same things. And maybe, yeah, totally. There's an element of wanting to recapture that for myself. And they're not a parent. So I think it's really interesting hearing that account about the mother who was talking about your friends and your friendships will look different in this season. They totally do. I don't know why, but I actually never joined mother groups, or there's one here. Actually, I won't name it because people then will know exactly where I am on the Central Coast. But, it's very popular to join these. And for some reason, I found it really difficult to join them and connect because I felt shy. Or there's also an element that when my daughter is around me, it's so hard for me to talk to another mom, even though the mom is in the same exact space where they're like, we get it. Like, like, maybe I mentioned this to you before, but my older sister and I always have this running joke where we're having a conversation, but the kids are around us and we're like, hold that thought forever. And it's like, it's in a way that's it's really hard for me to be satisfied with a situation where we're just holding our thoughts and never getting back to them. And I think that's why I never joined motherhood groups, even though I knew it was a safe space, like moms totally get it. But for me, and also I feel really guilty when my daughter notices that she doesn't have my full attention. Like, it just actually rips me apart because I want to be 100% for her, 100% for other people, but obviously you can't do that. Kids are so keen. They just really know where your eye contact is going, where your attention is, or if you're, giving 2% versus 100%. So I actually prefer to hang out with other moms without our kids,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Definitely makes
Yeah.
sense. I think that, having that independence to be present and to be a friend is, totally understandable. And I also think like you're taking risks in your life of being a mother in the newness of it all, right? Like you're learning how to be a mom as the child is growing minute by minute. And so I also feel like sometimes when you're like trying to, develop friendships, it's like you want to take less risks in that regard of like saying like, hi, I want a friend right now. Are you interested in being my friend? Because it's like, I do all these, management things every day while my child is awake, And so I also kind of like really connected to the aspect of, the last person talking about like when we do approach people, like it is a risk and maybe we need to be direct, but that's hard. So anyways, yeah, I just empathize as well. And I'm so grateful for all those voices because like
Yes.
there's everybody's story is unique, but the desire for connection and to be known is universal. And we just got to give each other grace throughout that, process of figuring that out,
Mm-hmm. So we want to ask you just one more question, really, which is what happened next? So maybe not, but you've explained a little bit of the way that you've contextualized this friendship in particular with your professional worlds and how it works. But as you moved on from initiating that initial friendship, asking about that coffee, how has connection looked like for you moving forward, and how do you want it to look like for you moving forward from here?
Okay, so I swear the universe is just, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Like, it's so crazy because on Monday, I actually ended up hanging out with this person and learning that they have left the city. Like, they're leaving their tenure at that role. Um, Last week, I was actually sitting in on some climate action plan roundtables, like the progress reports that they're going to be putting out, for the next 10-year forecast, that sort of thing. And they were in one and they announced, I only have 3 days left. So if you have any questions, please talk to me. And so once I heard that, I actually just went up to them, and was like, can we get a drink? Like,
A drink is very safely not in work hours.
Yes.
totally.
Coffee can be misunderstood. Drink, we got to talk.
100%, exactly. Yeah. And once I heard that they weren't going to be at the city anymore, just stopped being really professional, honestly. When I like went up to them, I was like, it's not going to matter because they're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up meeting up on Monday and honestly connecting. And I got to hear too from their perspective what it was like, working for the city. And it kind of it made me feel better that I wasn't just, like it truly was the story that they have to hold people professionally, like at arm's length. And so it made me feel like, okay, like I'm not like a boring dud who just became a mom. No one wants to hang out with you kind of feeling. And we finally just got to break open, talk about Bernie Sanders, things like that. And they're so interesting. So unfortunately, with leaving the city, they're doing some leaving the city and then literally physically leaving the city. They're about to embark on a road trip across the Pacific Northwest, and it's going to be a whole thing. Like they souped up a trailer, like, going to actually be doing some really cool stuff for social justice. So I'm just, I think even though they're leaving, I let them know, like, anytime you need a landing place, like, park that trailer at my house, just like totally crossing whatever professional line there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting the validation, like you said, that they're open to a version of friendship that works in this next context, and that their reaction around your invitation was, again, not about you, which we knew all along. I know that it's hard to know that for yourself, but we knew that all along. So I'm sure that just felt really nice and connecting, even if it doesn't immediately fit into your day-to-day life.
It did. It felt amazing. And they themselves, as a person, are actually very stoic. So they don't really show expressions, like even outside of the professional context. So actually that last, or not the last, the professional speaker who we heard a clip from, they mentioned about putting yourself out there, positioning yourself and being more expressive about like what you're feeling. And I think that really helped actually give them the cue. Like when we finally hung out on Monday, to give them the cue they told me when we were leaving, they're like, and obviously we got along right from the get-go. And because, just something, I can't even remember what they said.
You're like,
perfectly.
Obviously.
And I was like, you had that, all along inside.
That's so fun. I love that.
Isn't that always the case though? I just think that we don't often get to know.
Yeah.
Like we don't often get those clues or even just a little insight from others. We have to navigate those early steps of putting ourselves out there without any validation. And so to eventually get that is great, but to remind ourselves that oftentimes it is there, and maybe we just assume that someone is going to be into us too, and that there is connection there, and that if it doesn't work out, let's blame it on logistics.
Yes.
Let's just all agree to blame it on logistics.
Nia, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. We just really appreciate it. And I love how the universe worked, and that, like, despite the timeline of us connecting and, having the story with you, that, we get to hear some completion to it, that you were able to connect and be seen,
I'm so shocked that this all happened right, before us three were supposed to meet. I actually almost cried when I was saying goodbye. I was like, "Don't be weird." Like, they didn't
that might have done something.
Exactly.
I don't think we can blame that on logistics. No, that's so sweet, and just like so wild the way that the timing worked out. I love that so much. That's so great.
Thank you so much, too, for just like letting me have this space to kind of explore these feelings that I don't really talk about, honestly, in the day-to-day. So it's actually very cathartic for me.
It
the
was
pleasure is
privilege.
ours.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
And if I lived in the Central Coast, you would be annoyed by me being like,
we're
Nia,
banging down the door.
Can we hang out?
I'm not kidding.
banging down the door.
Anytime you guys want to come up or need a place to stay, like, we're right in the downtown of San Luis Obispo. So, yeah. And we're putting in a sauna. So,
Ooh,
Well,
very nice.
You got to say that from the top. So fun. Thank you, Nia, for joining us.
Everyone, be sure to follow Nia at earth.y.y on TikTok to learn more about what daily life as a designer and sustainability specialist is all about.
This Misconnections essay was written by Nia James Starr and edited by Charlotte Beach. Charlotte Beach is a writer, sign painter, and muralist based in Los Angeles. To follow her work, follow her on Instagram at Scarlet Peach.
Also, special thanks to Stephanie Villa Davis, April Reiki Jackson, and Morgan Dixon for sharing their experiences. This is Misconnections. Thanks for listening. I'm Elizabeth Wyndham.
And I'm Elizabeth Villa. Special thanks to this week's guest, Nia James Starr.
Misconnections is co-hosted, produced, and edited by us, the Elizabeths. Elizabeth Villa with special thanks, and Elizabeth Wyndham with Windhaven Productions.
Our theme music is Feeling by Danielle Musto. Be sure to check out our Substack at misconnectionspod.substack.com.
And please follow, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.